Okay, so everyone, we should see my remote desktop session. At this point, you can go ahead, if you haven't already gone to Staff Portal or POSSE Web and logged in, you can go ahead and do that. And so I'm going to hop into a Chrome browser window. I already had this open. I'm just going to shut this down and log off. It'll also give me the ability to switch users while I'm doing that. I'm going to put into our chat the URL if anyone needs it. And while I'm doing this, if anybody has any questions about parking lots or anything that we're getting into today or anything at all, feel free to come off mute and ask, and feel free to raise your hand at any time as well.
Yep, and actually, why don't everybody just go ahead and raise your hand once you get into POSSE Ad Hoc, the same way we logged in yesterday, so we know that you all have made it and we're ready to get going. All right, and Ray or Jonathan, have either of you been able to get into Ad Hoc? Oh, looks like Jonathan did.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And Ray, it looks like you are still muted if you're hoping to speak via the phone. I don't know if I have the ability to unmute you, so it would have to happen from your end. I'm not sure what button it has to be on the phone to unmute. Ah, cool. Looks like you're there. Sounds good.
Okay,
all right,
great.
I think we're ready to get started. And everyone can, you can put your hands down so we can use those later for questions. But
thank you. Okay, we're going to go in and we're going to create a report, but let's start with some good practices. We need a design for this report. We need a purpose. We need a reason we're going to create this report. So I'm going to slide my screen over. At the top there, I have our report number 2. I'm going to put in some language for report number 3. And we're going to be making a gauge report. And you'll get to see what this looks like. Gauge reports, I think they can be very useful. But again, finding that use case is going to be important. So here we go. Number 3, our gauge report. We're going to take our title, Notice of Violation, Average Days to Issue. So right there, I hope that gives us a little bit of an idea, but we're going to take, well, we'll start off with what data source will we need. We're going to need notices of violation. And from there, we can build out this report. We're going to jump in. We're going to create a calculated field in this example. And that'll be our first opportunity at seeing that. But this gives you a lot of functionality to modify your data as you're creating a report. And we'll get to see that in a few different ways today, but this will be the first one that we do get to see. So I'm going to come in, and everyone, you can just hang out with me, watch in just a couple minutes. So I will switch over and see if one of you would like to share your screen, maybe Lori or Dawn or Ray. We could start with one of you, share your screen in a few minutes and create this report. So I'm clicking on the plus button next to the report tab, and I believe a report should be coming open here. A new report should be coming open here in a moment. Let me make sure I actually did what I thought I did. So no was the answer. All right, so clicked on the plus button. Here we are. I can either search for this, I can scroll down. I really like using the search functionality once you get used to it. And I'll go back to, okay, we need notice. Here's notices of violation. We have no relationships to this table. We also do not need any relationships to do the report that we're going to create. So I have filled out my data source. Great. I have data coming from Corral, and I can move on to the design. I can start off, if I want to, by adding in the name of this report. Got that done. Going down, we're creating a gauge type of report part. Add this in, go back to, all right, well, what do I need to create this? We're gonna really look at pretty much one field builds this all. And we're gonna create our calculated field. We'll call it days to issue. And what we're gonna do is essentially take the difference in days between the created date and the issued date. In this case, the issue date is the NOV, what do we have here? NOV issued. Ray, do you have a question? Okay, if you do have a question, just come off mute and ask it. I'm just seeing your hand raised as I looked over. All right, so to add a calculated field, I see this above my data source. So this adds it to the data source.
Yeah, Ray, I haven't heard you in a little bit. So if you have a question, you can use the chat feature as well, and we might be able to help you out there. You're not able to ask the question you were hoping to ask there.
So I've already built out a function for this to save us a little time, but let's also just for a moment chat about coming in here and creating an expression. You can click on this light bulb at any time. You have field names that you can click, and you look up here and you see our brackets. It's grabbing our data source, it's grabbing our schema, it's grabbing the view that this is coming from, and then the detail. So instead of having to type out each one of those and getting it perfectly correct, you can click on the light bulb and you can come down. You can select your data source. We only have one right now that we have in this report we're creating, and you can come down and just pick what you need off of here. So in this case, we'll select the created date. Now, in addition to being able to grab columns, you can also grab functions. And these functions line up with MySQL. So if you need to go do a search on what a function does while you're building one of these out, you can just search for the function name and type in MySQL as well, and you should get some results in Google that really explain the parameters it's expecting and what that function does. So I won't stick around here too long and chat about that, but essentially in this case, what I've done is, again, I'm taking the created date and I'm getting a difference between the created date and the date of NOV issued. In this case, I'm also saying if if the NOV hasn't been issued, I want to grab today's date instead and take that difference. So let's say a NOV was created 3 years ago and hasn't been completed. That would be counting 3 years worth of dates or days. I'm going to put in the type for this, numeric. And again, we're going to call it days to issue. And then we'll click OK. It's currently telling me my expression is off. And let's see if I can resolve that by removing space. No. What am I missing here? Might be a parentheses. There we go. My closing parentheses wasn't there. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to, at this point, take days to issue, and I'm going to add it into my value column.
And I'll go ahead and jump in here just for a moment and say that, yeah, calculated fields are slightly more complex. It's introducing a bit more technical and sort of programming knowledge into the equation. They're exceptionally powerful, and they allow you to enable some things that you would just not be able to do with the basic data that's there, because you're kind of manipulating the data into a way that works for you. But you won't have to use calculated fields all that often to build basic reports and stuff. It's really something that we want to show the functionality that you guys can do and show how to execute it. And it's something that isn't necessarily needed for every report. It really just extends that functionality to more advanced tools.
Absolutely. And again, yeah, extends the functionality, allows you to modify data that you're already bringing in and to get an answer that you're looking for. So in this case, it brings this in, it automatically decides to group this with a sum function. We're going to change this to the average, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the average days that it takes to issue. And we look at this number, and there's, all right, so we've again created a very rough report. It has essentially the backbone that we're looking for, but there's still a number of things that aren't exactly what we want. One of those pieces are going to be that we are taking in the number of days for NOVs that have not been completed or issued. So let's try to use a few tools and separate this out and make it more meaningful to us.
And I will also jump in real quick also to fully explain Ray's question. I mean, Ray had simply pointed out that, yeah, this is somewhat of a contrived example. You would want to actually count RFI date through the NOV date to get an actual legitimate number of days for your actual business case. We picked this as a simple example, not necessarily as a true business case, but we're demonstrating the tool. We're not necessarily demonstrating the proper use based on your actual business scenarios. That's something you guys will be doing. So,
thank you, Sam, and great point, Ray. All right, so we're looking right here. We can set the scale to what we'd like to set it to. We can add a label. We can change how this is showing up. So right here, let's first start with, yeah, I really do not need to see this much precision in the decimal. So let's take care of that off the bat. Do I even need to be seeing a 0? Probably not. So let's just start with that. So selecting the format, I get different options. Is this currency? Is this percentage? Is this a number? What do I want to see from this number? Do I need to see decimals? Do I need to see commas? In this case, we're not expecting to go over 1,000, but we could easily go no decimals and comma if necessary. So fantastic. We've selected our format. That makes it a little bit more powerful. Well, let's try to make it more meaningful next. And let's grab a few things. So we can add in filters. We can also take the status description and put this in either as a separator down here or up in the x-axis.
So Chris,
either
Charlie
way,
asked a good question.
Yeah.
Would the violations that are canceled be included in that count currently?
Yeah, well, let me throw in that status description and you will get to see
Exactly.
what is included in that count. So the answer is yes. As of right now, we have not filtered out or in any way said that canceled NOVs will not be in this count. So we have to explicitly state that either with a filter or just by separating out the data so that we can see what is in here. So I'm going to take the status description. Let me add it in as a separator. And we'll see how that changes what we're looking at. Okay, so right now we have 2 items, draft NOV reviewed and job canceled. And let's change this to all because I would like to see if that's really the data that would be fully pulling back.
No?
Yeah.
Well, looks like it is.
It is. Sounds good. Just to continue showing that, I'm going to pull status description up to our x-axis. And so you have 2 ways to separate out your data in this case. And that's not always the same, but for the gauge, the x-axis and the separators are roughly going to complete the same item for you. So we can do a few things from here. I would actually like to change our calculated field quickly so that we can get some data a little easier to work with, and that's, or we can just change to add in our status description, and maybe we only want to look at draft NOV reviewed. So let's take created date, let's take status description, and add these in as filters. And let's quickly get a little more used to modifying our filters. So I'm going to click on the pencil button and just modify that to be something a little more readable in both cases. Then I'm going to look at what the filter is actually doing. Maybe I don't need description there. Maybe status is really what I want to communicate. So again, I'm going to take the between date. So this is a time and date. I'm going to take a date range here for status. I'm going to take multiple statuses. And instead of having entry, I'm just going to allow selection. And I don't need to worry about the delimiter values if I'm going with a selection. Each item will be picked off the drop-down menu. Okay. If I need to look, we'll sit here on filters for a moment longer, go into settings here. If I need to look at more properties for a filter, I can click on that gear button. That'll open up settings. And I can modify the alias from here as well. I can decide if this is required, if this is visible. Cascading. Cascading means that if I delete out a value of a filter, that any other filters after it those values will also be removed. And then we can decide on a sort here as well. So how is that drop-down list displayed? How are we sorting that? All right. I've carried on longer than I want to at this point, and definitely given this some complexity as an example. Let me remove a little bit of complexity because I'd like to finish showing what a gauge should end up looking like and how it can be helpful as a quick visual report. So I'm going to go back to days to issue. I'm going to strip out my, excuse me, I'm clicking on this gear to pop up. So days to issue, my field properties open up. Here is my field name, here's my data type, here's my expression. I can get my full menu for a calculated field. Here, I'm going to switch this to not take in today's date. So only for NOVs that have a date NOV issued will we be getting a result back. So right there, that is going to be doing a certain amount of filtering for us and change what we're looking at. Okay, so that's processing that. I want to take a look at scale. I'm going to set the scale from 1 to 5, and that'll do that for both of these or all of them. Unit label, we'll say days to issue. And now that's adding in a label below here. And then here's the piece of the gauge that really makes it helpful. So I'm going to set a static threshold setting. And I'm going to say that anything below 3 is low, or is good, really, in this case. And anything greater than 4 is bad. So this gives us this kind of green area where, okay, if it's at 1 day, if it's at 2 days, 3 days, great. That's where we want to be. As we get in the 3 to 4 day range, we're saying, okay, we need to watch out for this. And then as it goes over the red, you're seeing, hey, this is something that we need to be aware of and work on. And that's really what a gauge is for. So I've gone long-winded into this. Let's see, Lori, would you like to go in and do this example with me? I'm going to copy and paste the expression into the chat for everyone for the calculated field. So that's something you can easily come in and put together. I'm going to currently save this, and Lori, if you want to come off mute and say yay or nay on being the presenter next.
I don't think I'm able to do it because I'm logged on to the network different from, you know, I'm on this meeting different from my screen. You know
so
what I mean?
You should be able to choose what screen when you choose to present. So Chris is going to stop presenting, and then you will choose present. And it should let you just choose your online connection to your remote PC.
Oh,
and
okay.
It'll just let you show that actual part of your connection as the screen that you're choosing to share.
Okay.
But Chris will need to pull himself off of the share.
I actually don't need to. It will kick me off if you
okay.
go to.
So yeah, the little rectangle then with the arrow pointing into it is the button you're looking for, Lori, to share your screen there.
Okay. So I just have one choice, desktop window. Yeah,
you should be able to just go ahead and click on that, and then you'll just want to minimize your browser and go back to the screen you were looking at where you're seeing your remote desktop and POSSE ad hoc. But just click on that one option and we'll walk you through from there. Yep. So now we're totally seeing your browser. We can see your total connection. So everything you're doing right now, we can watch and help you along.
Okay.
The other thing is that Chris did provide the expression that you're going to need into the chat. So we'll go grab that here in a little bit after we've created the report and we're ready to add the calculated field. So at this point, Chris will just help you along.
Okay.
All right. So just trying to get a good look at your screen and where you are. What are you thinking, Lori? Just talk us through what you're thinking as the first steps to create this report.
I guess I have to choose my fields, right?
Yeah, so you at this point, you have selected the, what data source?
Notices of violation.
Perfect. So that's done. So you are done with gathering up all the data sources that you need or all the data that you need for this report. So go ahead and move on to the design will be the next step. So over on the left menu, you're just going to go down one from data source. Great. And here, what do you see and what will be your next steps here?
Was it this, the date notice of NOV issued?
Go ahead before you grab any of the details that you're going to need. Go ahead and let's go back to, we're looking to create a gauge type report type. So we need to create a report part type gauge.
Right here?
Yep. So go ahead and click on gauge and that will get us where we need to go. Perfect. So at this point, our really what we're using to display our average is going to be that calculated field. So look over on your left-hand side, go all the way up to the top. Yep, add a calculated field. And here, we're using the name days to issue for the field.
So yeah, just type in days to the issue right there at the top to name that so you know what you're looking at later when you pull it into the report.
Well done. And for the expression that will be added in there, go ahead and find your Teams window and go to the chat on the Teams window. And I pasted in the date difference expression in there. Perfect. For the data type, go ahead and select numeric. So we're expecting it to return the number of days. And that's it. Click OK. So this is going to help us set up the data that we'll be seeing. All right. From here, you'll be adding that into the values section. So values, y-axis, that will be going into that first field value. So you can either drag and your calculated fields shows up as a different data source at the bottom.
I don't see it.
If you go to the left and scroll down, all the way to the left,
I see
and scroll
here.
down, there you go. Yep.
Okay, so
It'll
drag
do
this
that.
to value?
Yep, drag that to value. And you could have also used the plus sign. Either way. All right, great. From here, let's go ahead and adjust the scale. Or, excuse me, you know what? Let's get our value correct. Let's change, we're currently summing up the days to issue. So go ahead on the right-hand side. Yes, let's change that function from sum to average. We would like the average days to issue. Wonderful. And then you can change the format to be a little bit more readable. Great. All right, at this point, if you wanted to, I'm trying to think anything else to do here. Nope, let's go ahead and just head over to that left side in the values section for metric 1. let's add a unit, a scale from 1 to 5. And then let's add the unit label days to issue, just so we have a label under there to help us understand what we're looking at. And then we'll add in the threshold settings. So go ahead and select the drop-down and you will see static. So dynamic is going to be based off of percentages. Static, you are choosing, hey, this is the amount of days that is good, good, concerning, and bad. So here, go ahead and enter in 3 for the low value. And then you can enter in 4 for the high value, and it'll automatically fill in the middle value between those. Great. Now you can add either to the x-axis, or let's have you add it to the separators. So if you scroll down a little further in that where you are, you'll see separators at the bottom. You can use the plus button. And we're going to look for the notices of violation. So there we are. And then we're going to go down to the status description. So that's the correct data source. And then we're going to grab the status description and click OK. Fantastic. At this point, you can go ahead and save it.
And I'll just go ahead and say for the rest of the group that, yeah, they're based on Herbert's question, and Ray's question, there's some material that we can send out later regarding MySQL. So the expressions that are built are using a SQL programming language called MySQL. And so that's actually a separate thing from ad hoc itself. There's material outside of that. You could even just go look it up if you want to. But I can send some links after this just to point you in the right direction if you are curious what sort of things are possible for those calculated fields. I'll send out some material later with links that point you in the right direction in that regard. Certainly a lot of learning to do there. It's pretty deep, but I'll at least send you some links to some basic knowledge in that regard.
Yes, I agree with you, Sam. It opens up a whole different area of learning. You're learning, you're adding on some learning into a SQL programming language or querying language. So from here, I'll go ahead and take the screen sharing back. But Lori, how'd that go?
Good. It's just a matter of remembering where to look for the various items.
Yeah, it is, and it'll take repetitions. So we'll try to get a few more repetitions today of how to create a report, and then how do you modify fields, how do you modify parts of the report, and what's going to satisfy your design. The biggest thing that makes this easier is simply having a design and having a vision of what you want done. If you come into ad hoc and you're just wide open to all the possibilities, it makes it very challenging. It's like going grocery shopping without a list, which to me is sometimes baffling at the amount of options and what all you could make. So same thing here, having a design, knowing what you're looking for and trying to put together, then you can start pairing together the functionality of ad hoc to meet where you're wanting to go. And the sooner you can be doing that in the process, the less running into a wall or less frustration you can meet while you're putting together your report. We are at 11:48 our time, 8:48 your time. Any questions from anyone?
So Adam was wondering how to get the expanded field properties menu on the right. Do you want to show quickly how that collapses and uncollapses if you're not
Yeah,
seeing?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen and let's quickly take a look at that. All right, so I'm back in ad hoc, or I never went anywhere. So for report properties as well as field part properties, they have the same structure, and you can click on the more or the less. You'll notice right now I'm not selected. Do not have a field selected, so I am not really seeing any options in here. But since I'm out at the report level, I do see all these options here. And again, start taking a look at how I would like to change, so we can look at different ways to display a gauge right there. Show labels. So again, different options: show more, show less, just to the right of that title.
And then if Chris was to select a field on the left, then all the field properties would become available to him as well.
Yep. So I'm going to click our average days, which is a calculated field. So I'm going to get some different options here as well. So show more. And here we go. I can take a look at color, alternative text to go there. Is this visible, not visible?
And then does the arrow at the top of that far right column collapse? I'm not even sure.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So if you're not seeing it, you might be able to hit that arrow and pull it back in if you need to.
Yep. All right, any other questions? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back and we'll get to take a look at a form report. And if you have any questions when we get back, we can chat about those first. Thank you, everyone.
See you in 10 minutes.